Welcome to the journey, and our journey takes us to a career change coach who helps professionals find clarity, builds confidence, and takes practical, sustainable steps towards careers that feel like themselves. Our guest firsthand knows how overwhelming and isolating changes can be, and over the past 20 years, they have reinvented themselves through multiple career pivots, some chosen, some not. And they also have navigated toxic workplaces, which I kind of understand, and I will relate to this as we go on. Layoffs, bullying, and even a human rights violation. So it all, I guess, just learned that career change isn't just about what you do, it's about how you feel whilst doing it. I welcome Kendra Court to the journey.
Thank you, David. Nice to be here.
You're welcome. Now, there is just in that little snippet I read about you, which will be in the description afterwards. You've gone through a lot, and you showed me before I started recording about a pen you've got, and I love that pen. It sums it all because it's like, fuck that, I've been there.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
you've worn the proverbial t-shirt. You've worn the proverbial t-shirt. You said, I lived it, I've been there.
Mhm. That's right.
But
That's
obvi
right. I feel
obviously,
like sorry, go ahead.
no, it's obviously the start of a journey. We will get to that bit in a minute because that is the pivotal moment, in my opinion, where the interview will be. But your earliest memories of your journey, what started your life as you knew it when you had that brain struck moment to say, that's me.
Well, it's interesting because I think that it was really the beginning of the pandemic. So I think you and I kind of share that career pivot moment in the early days of the pandemic that I think all of the career moves that I had taken up until that point, it always felt like something was missing for
Mm,
me in my career. And I had done really incredible things, but when everything came to a halt at the beginning of the pandemic, it was these moments of silence and quiet and calm where I really asked myself, like, is this what I really want? Am I doing what I should be doing career wise? Am I fulfilled? And so it was really, I think, thank the
mm.
pandemic for that opportunity to be introspective and go on my own, journey of self-discovery.
Yeah, and I think, the pandemic did alter a lot of things and made things a lot more not contained, but it opened up a lot of opportunity from some people because it's at that borderline when you're in that sort of mindset. I got a job, for example,
Mhm.
and you think, oh, I'm crap at this job, or I'm being told I'm crap at this job. And then you get the opportunity to go off that when you're in the pandemic situation because that's your time to reevaluate things. You got that time for yourself to think
That's right.
because when you're in a situation like you said in your bio, toxic workplaces, layoffs, bullying, even human rights, you can't really think of it in the moment because you're
That's
so
right.
consumed with all upset, anger, frustration,
That's right. Like you're
panic.
in the thick of it, right?
Yeah. And you can't get out of it because how can you get out of that situation when you're in that situation? You can't.
That's right.
And
Yeah,
if you vocalize it, and this is how I've been myself, if you try and vocalize it, usually you get shot down, you get laughed at, you get mocked for just being yourself.
hmm Yeah.
So
And
the
it's survival mode often, right? Like
mm,
we go from one job to the next, or we an incident occurs and we don't really make the next move intentionally or mindfully often. It's out of necessity,
mm,
right? I lost my job. Oh shit, I've got to figure out what's next really quick because I got to pay the bills, you know? And or I had a terrible boss and I got to get away from this fucking guy, pardon my language. And, you know, I've got to get to the next quickly. I can't waste time. So I think, we fall into careers that maybe don't necessarily feel like the right fit, born out of necessity. And to your point, head down, survival mode. We don't we're not often mindful or intentional on our journeys with our career. And so that's why I say I thank the pandemic because I got laid off mid-March 2020 and everything came to a grinding halt. I was in hospitality. I was in like the restaurant and events
mm,
world, which, nobody was having events anymore come March 2020.
yeah,
And so I really had this gift of time to reimagine my career and be intentional about what was next for me. And then I was able to ask that question, like, what do I really want? Versus, to your point, well, I've just got to, you know, get the next job or I've got to sort of move forward quickly. So,
yeah. And the blessing of the pandemic, it lets you was in the minefield of the places you had to physically work.
right.
Like my main job at the time was being custodian in a mainstream hospital. It wasn't big
Oof.
as in main big hospitals, but it was big for the local area I was in at the time.
Yeah. So
And
you were front line.
yeah,
Yeah.
even though I was just and I'm not demeaning custodians in any way because they are remarkable and they put up
Mhm.
with a lot of crap in their life as well.
Absolutely.
But the fact was, I was in the mainstream hospital. I was working third shift, which in England, if you don't know what third shift is, it's a term,
Night shift,
is
right?
night shift.
Yeah.
And I was there from 11 o'clock, 10:30 at night to 7 o'clock in the morning. And because of one of my main roles was I had to bleep the pager. And yes,
hmm
pagers still exist in America some places. But I had that responsibility. If a pager went, I had to respond to it. So if there was two custodians that night in this hospital. There was me, who was the main, you know, floor service as they call it, and there's the custodian who was cleaning the other areas that I didn't get to. But floor service meant I had to respond to anything, and that
hmm
meant anything. Whether
Ooh,
whether it was a patient in the fifth floor to the fourth floor where it was as I nicknamed it, the COVID ward, because that's where all the
right.
COVID patients went.
Yeah.
ICU, the intensive care unit,
Yeah.
to the ER or emergency department, as I should say now, emergency department. And you saw everything.
Yeah. I bet.
Even as a custodian, you saw everything.
Oh, I bet.
And
Yeah.
and what they didn't tell me at the time when I first did that job, and they said, "You're like, okay, you've been floor service. We allow you to be floor service." They didn't tell me beforehand. They didn't tell me that the critical point of being floor service was helping security move dead bodies if we had to.
Oh, David, what a
So on
time.
my first day, I had a pager go. It was from security. Can you come to the ER? We need some help. Okay, I'll just walk. Okay. Are you okay with moving bodies? I said,
I
I, it's
guess
like
I have to be.
yeah, I luckily I can handle it. It's the fact I can handle it.
Yeah.
But I handled it. And then it was like moving. They got so used to me in the emergency department because they knew I was going to be based more around the emergency department than
Yeah.
anywhere else. Even though I was floor service, which meant I could be anywhere.
Yeah.
I chose to be in the front line to say I'm near the emergency department. If you need me, I'm here. And that was my main area.
Wow.
Even though
Good for
it
you.
wasn't fixed as a main area by this hospital administrator who gave me the role, I said I'm being near the emergency department because that's where I think the need is more for.
You had the sense that that's where you were needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I pretty much got the idea of all the numbers that came through on the page and then knowing when it was the fourth floor, when it was ICU, you get used to it.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to pick up the pager and automatically say, "Oh, I don't know where that is." I'm going to ring them and say, "Where are you?"
Yeah.
So if the fourth floor called, I automatically would go straight there without calling them, and I'll just say, "You paged me." So they got used to me not calling. But the fact was, you meant to call them to say, "Okay, I've received your call," but
Well,
it was,
and it must have been so busy in those early days, right? With as the pandemic was evolving, I mean, as we were learning more and more, I mean, and as it was spreading,
yeah.
what a
And
busy time for you.
some cases, I just had to wear, those gowns they wear and a mask.
Yeah.
And that's all it was. And obviously double glove. They always recommended double glove. But I always just thought this isn't much protection. Then obviously got stronger and stronger. And then they said, okay, if you're going to be in a main area, you have to be in a respirator. So I had to be suited up properly. And
What a time we lived through. Holy cow. When we think back on it.
yeah. So it's a relatable thing when I then branched out into podcasting.
Yeah.
Because I saw people day in, day out. I didn't know they were. Pops, I saw one or two randomly I would see someone I would recognize, but I couldn't say I knew them unless they said hello to me. And I was like, I know them, but I can't get involved. But it was
Well, and
but
I
there's
find that
yeah,
I find that interesting because my belief is that we all have a calling.
mm,
And we feel that inside of ourselves. So I think what you're talking about when you parlayed your skills and talents into podcasting, it was this deep inner wisdom that you
mm,
had, right? I mean, you were in this completely different field. You were over here working in the hospital, but something inside you was yearning and was calling you over here,
yeah,
and so that's really in a nutshell what I do with my clients is I help them tap into that inner wisdom and then parlay their skills, their talents, their expertise into something else, right? So if they're really feeling incongruent or misaligned
mm,
with what they're doing professionally, my role as a career coach is to help them figure out what it is that they're supposed to be doing
yeah.
based on, who they are.
Mm. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not condoning the work of them at all because, anyone lower than me because I've been there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Lord
after,
knows. Me too.
and recently, you say about, toxic workplaces.
Yeah.
I know how that is. And I'm not going to name companies. People who know me will know what I'm talking
Right.
about if they see this and watch this.
Yeah.
But I was in a workplace and I thought I was in a stable and it was salaried. It was actually a
Yeah.
salaried job. I was happy. And then I was told my performance wasn't up to their standards. This
Mm.
was still as a custodian because obviously I've been so used to being custodian in America.
Yeah.
And they told me, we don't want you anymore.
Mm.
They told me, they pretty much dismissed me on my performance.
Oof.
And they
It's so hard on the esteem, isn't it?
and the fact is I had like plenty of experience and then the manager supervisor, whatever you want to call him, called me out on the fact that I was calling off sick after training days, and I'm like, I'm not calling off because I have severe migraines. How can I perform effectively if I got a migraine?
Yeah. Well, you can't perform
And
at your best,
and
right?
then they mocked me for being British, and often when he introduced me to a member of staff that I hadn't met before, this is David. You might not understand him because he's British.
Come on. That's so rude.
And
So
of it,
rude.
and like I said, I was recently dismissed from that job, and I was job searching, and luckily within a couple of days, I think it was, I applied for somewhere, and I'm not doing janitorial custodian work now. I'm actually doing something basic again, but it's a job.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not salaried,
Good.
but I'm happy with doing what I'm doing because I've accepted custodian work was just a label that was put onto me by certain people in my life to say, this is all you'd be good for. And
Mm,
again, this is a thing that you can relate to in certain circumstances. When you're in with a partner, partners like to think they know what's good for you.
hmm.
Only you as a person, I
That's
believe,
right.
knows what you're good for. And yes, I did custodian work ever since I came to America, but that's because it was, you got this, you can do it. It's a job for life. You'd be fine.
Hmm. But I think also what you're doing with your podcast is you're fulfilling that other part of you.
Mm,
So, if you were one of my clients, I would say, here you are, the custodian work is serving a purpose, right?
mm,
It's paying the bills, but you're tapping into your greater potential by doing your podcast,
yeah,
right? And so I think it's when people don't have that other outlet, if they're not feeling fulfilled in another area of their life, then the job could drag them down and it
yeah,
could feel like drudgery, right? But for you, you probably go in there, you do that work because it's like a means to an end, right? It serves its purpose. And when you really light up is when you're doing this work, right?
mm,
Is that
yeah,
is
yeah.
that fair?
That's fair. That's fair. And
Yeah.
I know certain people who are just in the job because they feel like there's no way out. And yes, because there is no way out unless you can automatically put your hand up and say, let me out. You've got to
Yeah.
be stuck in that situation. And I
Right.
feel for those people. Like, one of my, I'm not saying it's a main sponsor, but one of my key elements on one of my, end credits, they write a book, but they also got a job.
Hmm.
They're in a toxic, workplace at the moment. I'm not going to say the name of a company because I'm still respectful of that company as well. But,
Yeah.
they can't escape that company because they feel like they can't.
Hmm.
And I'm like saying, no, you can actually overcome it. You can be free of it, but they still write in their books. So
Yeah.
that's their alternative to a
Their
feeling.
outlet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
support that. And, I really would, like I said, I'm not promoting it. It's at the end of a podcast for people to listen to. But their books, I bought every single one because I'm being biased because it's my partner.
Yeah.
But
Well, and they probably speak to you, or
yeah,
it wouldn't have become your partner, right?
yeah. And,
If you didn't feel aligned with it.
yeah. And I feel aligned with the fact of, supporting her because she struggles a lot. And I see the emotion wear and tear. It's draining her. It's making her feel less than capable and feeling down where the tears are
Hmm.
there, feeling lack of support. I'm supporting best way I can, but there's only so much of me, and she knows this in her own way as well, so I'm not saying it nastily.
Yeah.
There's only so much I can actually physically before I get overloaded myself.
That's right. We only have so much in the tank, right? Like there's only so much of us energy, bandwidth that we have to
Mm.
give,
And
right?
like I said, I support her
That's great.
wholeheartedly. And that's what I want to do. So when she writes a book, I'm buying that book because I support her. Why? Because I do. I support her in what she makes choices with. If she says to me, David, I feel crap because work was this way towards me, I say I understand. And I actually do understand. I give her the prep talk every morning saying, you got this, take no crap.
Yeah, that's right. I love that. I
And
love that. Well, not everybody has such a supportive partner, David. So,
no,
some people have to hire a coach to give them that pep talk.
and that's where you come in about talking about career changes. And it's about you talk about this in one of your topics, navigating career change with confidence and clarity.
Yeah.
And
And I think, especially when you get to about mid-career, I think in our 20s and even in our maybe early 30s, we sort of approach our career with this naivete that it's all going to turn out the way that we thought. And often we succumb to societal uh, expectations or, cultural norms. There's certain professions or certain jobs that have a better connotation, or so we sort of fall into these traps, but it doesn't necessarily align with who we are.
mm,
And I think we don't often start to question it until about midlife. And so I'm finding more and more that my clients are at about that midlife or mid-career point, and maybe they did the thing that they thought they should do or they could do easily enough, but they've woken up now and said, well, this doesn't fulfill me, or I'm frustrated, or I'm not, reaching my potential, or, there's something more for me out there, but
because
not knowing how to figure that out.
they say middle age on average is about 35 nowadays.
Yeah.
Uh,
So there
and
you go.
I know I'm past middle age. I'm 41, 42 in September.
Yeah.
And
Which is about the age that, like, most of my clients are kind of in that 35 to 50 age range, right?
mm,
That, I know for myself, I was never taught how to discover uh, what it was that I should be doing career-wise. And this is no slight against my parents necessarily, or my guidance counselors or whatever. It was just that it wasn't a main concern, wasn't, you know, be happy or find fulfilling work. It was like, find a job, like, get a
yeah.
job and pay the bills. Like
And
that was,
in America, Canada more so than the UK, I found if you at an age, they want you to get a job straight away, pretty much at the age of 15 onwards.
yeah. And then it's like, go to college or university. We call it university in Canada, but where you are, I know it's called college. And it's like, go and do that, but then immediately, like, just get a job, like, take a job and start earning,
Yeah.
right? And it's almost like what we're passionate about and what we care about and our values, it's like that's not even taken into consideration. It's just, what do you have the skill for? What can you do to make money? What can you do to earn a living? And so my approach, it's almost like a reverse engineering of your career. And that's why I say I help people navigate this career change with
Mm,
clarity, because it's a real clarity on what you want and what is going to fulfill you, and how do you align that with, like, what does the world need?
mm. And you talk about the clarity and all. I remember being in school, one of my many little roles I did in school was being a counselor for careers, helping people
Oh,
who were coming into the fact of careers.
nice.
And I remember the teacher who gave me the paperwork to help the students is like, give them the leaflets. If they ask, well, what's this job? You just dig it out. And I said, okay. And then towards the end, I started thinking, and this was in the early days before Google surveys and all came out. I like started creating a little program. It was only a basic program because I like programming as well. And I created something that they can actually click on and they can actually answer questions, and it would roughly give
Cool.
them a rough idea of what they wanted to do.
I love that.
Now, hindsight, you do get that kind of thing now when you go online, when you ask AI and ask it, am I good for this because I got this? And it does give you a rough idea.
Hmm.
but obviously AI so in the fans, it just takes into generic answers. So it's a,
Yeah.
but the human touch is knowing what a person wants. Like when I went through the career stage in school, they just interviewed me. They said, okay, let's look at your grades, what you got in school.
Hmm.
Okay, you're good for this.
Hmm.
They take you for face value and look at what you've got in front of you.
That's right. And it's almost like it's dictated to you,
Mm,
right? Like, David, you will be good at this. And then that imprints in your brain, right? And it informs your self concept and your identity. And so if you then think you're only good for this, then that's how that's going to play out. And that's why I say my approach is this reverse engineering, because it's actually asking you what you want, right?
mm,
What lights you up, what you feel like you can contribute to the world to make it a better place. I mean, that's getting a little existential here, but that's kind of the idea is don't waste time doing something that doesn't bring you joy, right? Or
mm,
happiness, or don't fall into something, don't do something and be in the box just because your teacher back in grade 12 told you that you could only be this thing,
mm.
you know?
And you don't have to feel shitty about your choices
That's it. That's it.
because you do feel shitty when people actually tell you you're good for this.
Yeah. And it's like, no, my belief is that we are all wired for greatness. All of us, every single one of us on the planet. And we all have a unique combination of skills and talents that allow us to contribute to the world, right, in a very specific way.
Mm,
So when you can tap into that and figure out what that is, that's the magic.
mm, totally is. So we touched upon what inspired your beginning. We're touching upon what you're doing now.
Yeah.
Now, for the future, and this is for generically future, as in where do you see yourself, as well as how do you see things changing for the better? Do you
I
feel like things are evolving in such a way that it's getting better, or do you feel like the way you're helping people will help them understand and it will be passed on for future people to say, this is what Kendra taught me?
Well, I really hope so. I mean, I've done a lot of uh, introspection and self-discovery work on my own journey. And so my hope is that this work that I'm doing will inspire and empower people um, to do the thing that they're meant to do. And I hope that that has lasting effects. I wrote a book, it's coming out later this month, and it's called The Thing You're Meant to Do. And it's a guide to really finding this work that we're all uniquely positioned for so that we can be truly fulfilled. And I believe that that'll have ripple effects into the future. Like if we
Mm,
all kind of make these shifts and we get rid of the shame and the guilt and all the things, and we actually just get in line with who we are. I mean, we need plumbers and electricians. We need janitorial staff, right? We need people to be doing all the roles to make our society run.
yeah,
And, we can't all be lawyers and doctors. We
true.
all have a role to play. And so if we're all doing the thing that we're meant to do, I believe that the world will be in greater harmony.
Yeah,
That's my belief.
that's a strong belief, and I do like that. So people be obviously wanting to know about you more and possibly reaching out because obviously there will be people saying, I might want help from Kendra.
Yeah, I would love
You got a
that.
website, you're on LinkedIn
I
and
do.
you
Yeah,
got
kendracourt.com. Pretty easy. Just my first name, last name.com. Like I said, I've got the book coming out later this month, so that'll be available on the website. And really, David, I offer what's called a career clarity call. So it's a free half an hour coaching session. And what happens in that call is we take a deep dive into what your current situation is and where the rub or where the friction is, where you're getting mistreated or where you misaligned or, where is that pain point? Where are you stuck? And then we come up with a game plan to get you unstuck, basically. And so that career clarity call, you can book that right from the website,
Okay. And if you, wherever you are in the world, you can
wherever.
actually click on that.
Yeah,
So,
there's a calendar right there on the website. You can book. And I would love to speak to your listeners. I mean, I think they will probably have found you because they're on their own journey
yeah.
of self-discovery,
Mm.
and I mean, my work is very specific to the career part. Um,
But it's
I
about
think
being, but it goes back to what I said about the early ethos. It's about being educated and inspired
that's right.
to be
That's right.
under, to be understood. I'm not going to say amused because well, you can have fun in the cool, but it's about knowing where you are and understanding where you are, I believe.
That's right. Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so to end this brilliant episode, and I'm not being biased because all my episodes are brilliant, but what would you say to people now to help them in their journey more?
Well, I would say get quiet. And I know that seems a bit silly or a bit like airy fairy, I mean, I do have a strong meditation practice in my own life, and I think whether you're taking the time to journal or pray or whatever it is, whatever the way that you get quiet,
Mm,
I think that's my biggest piece of advice or my biggest tip because life is noisy, especially now. There's so much that grabs our attention with social media and there's a train going by my office right now that's grabbing my attention. But there's so much in our life that's noisy and wants to grab our attention. And in order to really hear that inner voice or that inner wisdom, we have to get quiet. So, however that looks for your listeners, whether it's sitting, quietly in meditation, it could just be find a quiet corner of your apartment or your house and take a few deep breaths and journal what comes to you.
mm.
But I think we all have our own inner wisdom, but we just have to quiet the mind a bit in order to hear it. Does
Yeah,
that make
I
sense?
makes sense. And I'd just like to say for viewers again, the website and email will be in the description as well as our sponsors for this podcast today.
Thank you.
But Kendra, thank you for sharing your journey with us. It's
Thank you
been
for having me.
enlightening to know, and at least I know I'm not alone in that toxic relationships in workplaces
Yeah,
is there. And
absolutely.
I just hope the clarity, what I given in my own way, helps me as well, because I do need that clarity to know it's okay. I've been there, don't need to wear that t-shirt anymore, and
Nope.
I'm moving on.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for having me, David. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ammie Harrison. I just published another book, and this is the first hard copy I've released. Let's claw right into a sneak peek. Hi, I'm my Galaxy Brat. Error. It is becoming clearer. Y'all probably think I'm annoying. Turns out they all just plain boring. I'm just being me, the realest version. Sweet on the inside, tell like it is on the outside. Yes, I embrace love, never hate. But honesty flies in my mouth like a dove. Be careful before it's too late. If you want to read more, visit the link in the description. Meow at you later.
Parsons. The narrator is Kate Barton. Director and producer, Darren Street. Tim Parsons would like to thank family and friends for their support with the paramedic Chris venture. The series is dedicated to the memory of his father, Reverend David Parsons. Copyright Tim Parsons 2020, all rights reserved. Unauthorized use, copying or sharing of this audiobook is strictly prohibited. This has been a Voice Reel studio production for Tim Parsons.
Oh, good afternoon, everyone. I've just been listening to the Paramedic Chris children's books on audio again, and I just love it because they've given a tribute in one of them to my dad as well, who passed away a few years ago. I love audio books, and it's great to walk around, and it's great to sit at the computer, if you're out jogging or wherever, to listen to them as well. All 4 of the Paramedic Chris children's books are available on audio book from Amazon. Go and take a listen to them. You won't be disappointed. You'll hear what happens when a community pulls together and supports one another. The best thing is to pop over to my website, paramedicchriskidsbooks.org, and you'll see the links on the shop page. Keep safe, everyone, and thank you for being you.
The Journey podcast explores stories of personal growth, challenges, and life-changing moments. Each episode dives into unique experiences, offering insights and inspiration for listeners navigating their own paths. I believe everyone has a story worth sharing. If you'd like to share your journey with David and others, email your story to wisewords1983@reborn.com, and it may be featured in a future episode.